So thank you for being here. This meeting is being recorded, and we ask that if you're here in person, you sign up out back on the sign-up sheet to have a record of your participation should you ever want to appeal or take any action. And if you are joining virtually, if you would please go into the chat area and provide your contact information so we have a record of that. And likewise, if you're on the phone, please send your contact information to mkeene at South Burlington VT, all one word, .gov. That way we have a record of everyone. Okay. Our first item on the agenda is emergency evacuation procedures. And in the event of an emergency, there are doors at the back of the auditorium on each side. You would exit those doors and either go right or left to get outside. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the order of agenda items that anyone would propose? Okay, hearing none. Are there any announcements or reminders? Okay, hearing none. Are there any comments and questions from the audience that are not specifically related to the agenda at hand? Okay. Moving along then, we will take item number 5 on the agenda, and my first question would be, are there any disclosures or recusals? Okay, hearing none. The item is sketch plan application SD 2405 of Allison and Vincent Baldock to subdivide an existing 16.46 acre lot development with a single family home and accessory structure into 2 residential lots of 2.0 acres and 14.46 acres and retain the existing single home and accessory structure on the 14.46 acre lot at 252 Autumn Hill Road. Who is here for the applicant? Okay. And if you would please identify yourself.
Brian Courier from Larry Burke Civil Associates.
And I'm Vince Baldock, and my wife is behind me over here, Allison, and our daughter, Michelle. And,
Hi.
some other people that we know. Some neighbors have come, which is very nice.
Are they likely to testify?
I don't know.
We're not swearing, it's sketch. So
It's sketch, so you're good. Thank you.
Brian, if you could turn on your microphone, please. Thank you.
Okay.
And it looks like maybe Andrew's joining us online.
We also have our son, who you can see on the screen. Andrew Baldock is on the top left up there.
Okay.
And some of you might recognize Andrew. He worked for the city for quite a few years.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
I have, if you don't mind, some introductory comments that'll kind of set the context, and I think also anticipate some of the questions that you'll probably have.
Sure.
And
Because as you know, we usually go through the staff report and discuss the highlighted areas, but we also love having a brief introduction.
Okay.
So.
Okay. This is 6 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay.
I'm timing you.
Okay, go ahead. When I run the candidate debates here, I do the same thing. We have a clock and we watch it very carefully. My wife and I deeply value the special qualities of the Southeast Quadrant. It's why we first bought 16 acres here in the 1970s and have actively sought to preserve its character. In the early 1980s, I served on the Blue Ribbon Study Committee appointed by the City Council to create a plan that would both preserve the special character of the area as well as allow for well-planned housing developments. The spirit of our work is still reflected in the purpose section of Article 9 of the LDRs. In fact, our report was the original source of the recommended 1.2 units per acre, the innovative idea of transfer development rights, and a golf course integrated with housing. Just recently, I served on the Open Space Committee, and am now active in the Affordable Housing Committee, trying to bring more housing to the city at this time of national housing crisis. I know I'm not alone in my concern that our Blue Ribbon Committee may have done its job too well. According to page 81 of the comp plan, 51% of our city is no longer developable because of regulatory conservation. Our two applications tonight are respectful of the comprehensive plan and the LDRs. We now own 67 contiguous acres in the southeast quadrant and are asking for permission to use less than three of those acres for 2 houses and 1 ADU. Given Act 47's new standards for allowing 5 units per acre on any area served by sewer and water, our ask tonight is very, very modest indeed. Our hope is to provide space for 2 houses for our family, plus an affordable ADU, perhaps for my wife and I someday. The house for our daughter will be entirely hidden in a woodlot, and the other will appear to the public as an extension of the 12-unit development on Windswept Lane. In order to protect the special qualities of the southeast quadrant, we would like the DRB to also know that we are working on with a state-certified forester to enroll more than 60 of our 67 acres in the current use program to better protect agriculture and forestry practices on our property. This has become very unusual in our city today. We've also contracted with the forester to help us identify the optimal location for both the access driveway and for the building envelope on the 6-acre forested lot. Except for these 2 carve-outs and our existing homestead, the remainder of all this land will be managed under the current use program, which, quoting page 91 of the comp plan, will continue to support working lands in this area. The exact location of that smaller building envelope is a product of compromise between competing natural resources and is proposed to be, and I quote, located on the site in a manner that represents the least impact on the purposes of the district. That's a quote from the plan. That language, of course, is taken directly from the LDRs section of the Supplemental Design and Conservation Standards. We have been good stewards of our fields and forests for over 40 years. We've planted over 1,000 trees, fought invasive species, culled diseased trees, and carefully managed our woodlands following the advice of professionals. We have built hiking and ski trails used by both neighbors and wildlife alike. We hand-built our super-insulated solar home 40 years ago and have 43 solar panels for electric generation, as well as a power wall for electric storage. Yearly, we burn about 6 cords of dead and diseased trees from non-fossil fuel for heating, as well as to make our signature South Burlington maple syrup. We make cider from our apple trees. We have a large productive garden of locally grown foods. At various times, we raise chickens, turkeys, goats, pigs, and sheep for local food, but also to help us manage our fields in an ecologically sustainable manner. We help the public view by keeping a large field open on Dorset Street by an arrangement with a dairy farmer from Heinsberg. One could ask why our application asks for 1.7 acre lot and for 1 2-acre lot. In the first case, we think that 0.7 acres is about the minimum size to avoid, this will be the one in the woods, to avoid falling limbs and falling trees, both of which are quite common in that wooded area, suffering unfortunately from diseased ash and beech trees. That size of a building envelope is also required to control the forest canopy to allow sunlight to reach the rooftop solar collectors a frequently cited goal of the city. The 2-acre lot is larger still because we believe that the inheritor of the parcel will likely wish to plant fruit trees, grapes, and berries and have a big garden, just as we have done for decades. The only trees on that parcel now are those which we planted. Our forest management and landscape work over the years has also helped us create a hospitable landscape for wildlife, another goal of the city. Comparing photos from our date of purchase in the 1970s to today, we see how our efforts have resulted in a verdant forested landscape where only rocky pastures existed before. Left alone, they would have been overgrown by brushy invasives from buckthorn to bittersweet vines and wild honeysuckle. And ever since, we are gardeners, planting, weeding, and harvesting. We believe that our applications are in conformity to the conservation and open space goals of the comprehensive plan, including goal number 83, to conserve ecologically important lands. Goal 84 will allow landowners to make use of their lands with conservation, agricultural, renewed energy development, and or very limited residential use. Goal 85, maintain farmland open and available for agricultural use and seek opportunities to establish small-scale farms. And goal 86, to maintain generally the open character of the area. The size and location of our windswept application, that is the larger lot, also fosters Action 121 of the comp plan, quoting, allow small-scale multifamily housing to blend in with single-family homes and duplexes to support thriving neighborhoods. Here we're simply extending the neighborhood by one unit. My wife and I want to thank you for your time tonight and for your consideration of our application. So I'll turn the floor over to Brian Courier, and unless someone else has a question directly for me, or unless my wife or daughter or our son wish to add something.
Thank you. I must say I overlooked an important introduction, and that is the introduction of our board members.
Oh, thank you.
If you'll bear with me, let me introduce John Muscatelli, Frank Kochman, Stephanie Wyman, Charlie Johnston, Quinn Mann, me, Don Philibert, and our staff, Marla Keene and Marty Gillis. I apologize for that oversight. So go ahead, Brian. Do you want to speak now, or do you want us to walk through the project?
Whatever you'd like, Don. If you want to start with the staff report, that's
Okay.
perfectly fine.
Let's go ahead and do that.
So this is for the sketch plan application, SD 2405. So as the description states, this is an existing parcel with frontage on Dorset Street, but with an Autumn Hill address. It's 16.46 acres. Typically would be subject to a conservation PUD, given that it's an existing parcel that's 4 acres or greater. As many of you know, the LDRs have a special exemption of the conservation PUD for one-time 2-acre carve-out, and the Bolduc family is here tonight with a sketch plan for that subdivision for the 2-lot carve-out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the first comment. It appears the habitat block is shown, incorrectly on the applicant's plan. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to correct their plans to clearly show the limits of the adopted habitat block.
Yes, so we sent a revised plan to Marla. That's the old one. Do you have the one I sent you today?
Yeah, it's just loading a little slow.
Gotcha. Yeah, so the habitat block, the figure was correct. I believe it was just slightly shifted one direction, more or less. So we know that information is available now on the VCGI website. So we brought in the shape file. So what is shown now is exactly what.
Could
the
you
city
introduce
has.
us to what all these different line types? I know that they're on the legend, but they're kind of, it's hard to see the
Yeah,
legend. And
so there's a lot going on. So the dark green line type, right there, where that cursor's showing, a little bit of a lag, but the dark green dashed line, the heavy set line, is the habitat block boundary. So what's south of that line is within the habitat block. What is north is not.
And what is all the green infill?
That goes with the next question, the next piece of the staff report.
Okay.
If you, yeah.
do you want to just, I don't know, Dawn, tell me if this would be unhelpful, but I think it might be helpful to sort of introduce what all all the thick lines are on this plan.
Sure.
'Cause there's
Yeah.
the blue and the red and the yellow.
Right. I think it would be a great overview.
Okay. So we went through the habitat block. There's two dark blue lines that are dashed. One's denoted as a 50-foot wetland buffer, which is the state standard, and then there's the 100-foot class 2.
Excuse me again. Now the mic is on. Could you specify what the limits of the property are?
Can you enlarge it?
Yep. So the limits of the property are the black dashed lines. So
All right, but it looks like it's divided into three lots. I thought there was only going to be.
yeah, so there's two applications in front of you. There's one 16-acre parcel with a 2-acre carve-out subdivision proposal. That's a sketch plan application. The southern one that's shown is only a 6-acre parcel. That's our next application, the conditional use application, next on your agenda. But as the driveway goes through the 16-acre parcel and the two applications really, are contingent on one another, we're showing them on the same plan.
So what are we involved in now? The application that involves the two top lots.
Just the subdivision, correct. Just the one 16-acre parcel, and then there's a proposed 2-acre subdivision.
Okay, and that's above that heavy line that goes across the center. Right?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
So it's the green piece.
Yeah, so the green shaded area is part of our 30% habitat block
Okay.
exemption.
All right,
It's the one on the left.
and I'm still struggling with. So we go all the way over to the left hand. What I'm calling the left hand is up north.
Yes.
Is top north. All right.
Yep.
So it extends all the way to the plot from which you're carving out the 2 acres extends all the way to Dorset Street. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that's sort of trapezoidal overall shape. Right?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay. And then the 2 acres comes out of the center.
that's correct.
All right. Thanks. That's helpful. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. So we've taken care of that. Thank you for correcting that.
Yeah, no worries.
Number 2, staff considers these acres are not eligible for exchange. Staff recommends the board confirm their agreement with this interpretation. Marla or Marty, could you please explain what that means?
Sure. Marty, do you mind going back to the map? And I'm going to read what it says. So in the environmental protection standards, if a lot has habitat block on it, you can modify the habitat block under some circumstances, which, my apologies, it was something I thought was applicable to this project. But before the LDRs get into how you can modify it, it specifically says land located within the SEQ NRP, within hazards or level 1 resources, and then some other stuff. It shall not be eligible for any of the 3 options to modify a habitat block. So it looks to us that the lands that are not within the habitat block on this map, and this is why I kind of wanted Brian to introduce all the lines. So the lands not within the lands that are not within a habitat block on this map are sort of a thing in the top left corner, sort of a trapezoid shape outside of the green, and then the homestead that's shaded green on the right. Everything else on this land is within a habitat block. So in order to do a carve out outside of those two areas, they would have to modify the habitat block. But the lands that are eligible to be modified are either within a wetland buffer or within the SEQ NRP, which is the yellow line on the plan. So our interpretation is that based on those two things, they can't do a habitat block modification. And because this is the first time the board's had to apply this standard, we just wanted to make sure that you agreed with that interpretation.
Yeah, it's the specific, we can't do an exchange. Right, so we can still modify under a different provision, but this,
Well,
Number-
so under section 1204D, modification of habitat blocks, it's not eligible. Yeah, I agree that the language is a little
yeah, so if you
want, but
If you go back to the old plan, you can see we were exchanging land that was within a hazard, but without. So, like the original plan is we're going to exchange habitat block area in that green area, the shaded green area, where it says, or just east of the existing house, and the green area on the other end. But we can't exchange those areas for building area elsewhere that's within a habitat block, because those two areas, or the vast majority of those two areas, are either within the NRP or within a hazard. Right, so the one by Dorset Street is within a wetland buffer. The 100 feet now includes the duplexes on Black Dog Drive. And on the eastern side, about half of that green shaded area is in the NRP. So our initial take on the habitat block modification was under the exchange provision, but staff is noting here on number 2 that that's not a realistic path forward for what's in front of you tonight. So there was the next note. I'm sorry, Don, I led you to that. Next one, I was going to explain the shading, but it's actually number 3. Talks about another way to modify a habitat block is if it's substantially covered. So substantially covered means that 70% or more of the total lot area is covered by a habitat block, which staff notes and asks us to verify that, you know, the only area that's not substantially covered or within a hazard is the, it's called out as 2.8 acres, but obviously in AutoCAD it ends up being 2.73 acres. And that's that green area that's associated with the existing house. So it's hatched there in green is outside of a habitat block and it's not within a hazard. So it's less than 30% of the area. It's 2.73. The parcel's 16 and a half acres roughly. So we would qualify under modification of the habitat block under a substantially habitat block provision. And the next page kind of walks you through the steps on how you modify the block based on that standard.
I'll just chime in to address the number 2 question that staff posed. I agree with the reading of that. It sounds like the applicant is on board with that as well, as far as modifications not an option. But I appreciate walking through the qualification under substantially habitat block covered, and that seems applicable in this case. So
Yeah.
I think that's what staff outlined, but just wanted to say that's my confirmation too.
Any other comments? Frank, you look like you're about to.
Well, I don't want to admit what I'm thinking, which is I haven't fully digested the issue yet.
Yes, I agree.
It's complicated, no doubt about it.
But it's now admitted.
well, it's sketch.
But I
so you get
suggest
another crack at it.
I suggest we proceed. I don't want to be a wet blanket on our microscopic examination of what's going on here, but if the LDRs mean that the people who have been stewards of this land can't carve out the small piece of it that they're proposing here, there's something wrong with the LDRs. So shall we do our best?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's move along. Guess we're on 4 now. I'm going to read this. Staff considers the applicant should apply this approach for the property and recommends the board direct the applicant to prepare a map showing clearly how the revised area was selected, including indication of areas selected under each of the above 4 criteria. Since this exercise has the potential to significantly modify the development configuration for the carve-out, staff recommends the board direct the applicant to prepare this map prior to concluding the sketch plan meeting.
Yeah, so the if you bring that old plan back up, Marty.
Before we
please.
switch, actually, Marty, sorry. I just want to sort of say, so they get the 30%, and the 30% has to be chosen in a specific order. So first, it has to be areas that are not hazard or level 1 resources. If there's none of that, then it can be areas that's not characterized by a preponderance of mature trees. If there's none of that, then it can be land within habitat blocks, but it has to exclude the core habitat block areas, which as far as I know is not a defined term, or areas that would sever a habitat connector. And then if there's none of that, then they can pick areas within habitat blocks, avoiding core habitat block areas to the greatest extent possible. So given that framework, if you want to present what you did, that'd be great.
Yeah. There you go. More colorful one. As I was saying before, the first step is land that's not covered as a hazard or a level 1 resource, as Marla states. So that is the hatched green area. That's there's a table in the bottom right that says buildable area calcs down there. The green area is noted as 2.76 acres. So that does include area within the NRP. Unfortunately, that's still not developable, but based on this definition, it still counts towards our 30%. So that's 2.76. And then the area shown in peach on the western end, and staff has an explanation associated with this one that is essentially that the Class 2 wetland buffer that's enforced by the state of Vermont is, the 100-foot Class 2 wetland buffer is specific to South Burlington. The Class 2 wetland buffer in the state of Vermont, and the vast majority of the state, is a 50-foot buffer. And given that the second area that is in this analysis is stated as land that is not characterized by a preponderance of mature trees, to us it seems like staff is alluding that 50-foot difference in wetland buffer would be preferable rather than designating mature trees within our 30% buildable area. So the peach area that you see there includes the vast majority of the 50-foot difference between a 50-foot state wetland buffer and a 100-foot wetland buffer that does not include a preponderance of mature trees.
Well, let me ask you a question. I guess the question is for staff. Can we avoid? Do we have the discretion to avoid the 100-foot buffer?
This section of the regulations, being specific to this scenario, is more specific than the wetland standards. And therefore, as long as they're following the ranking, then go ahead.
Okay.
And there's more.
The other way around it. You're
I
gonna have to
I
impact
think that's a
something.
very astute interpretation.
Yeah, so so it does say a lot containing a combination of hazards and level 1 resources. So hazards are wetlands, so you got to impact either the hazards or not directly impact the wetlands, but hazards are part of this definition of describing what the 30% buildable area is. So, we agree. We think the
Move
reduction
on.
is
Take the win and move on. Okay.
okay. Sure. So the western part of that peach area, you can see there's a 50-foot buffer shown. If you move just to the left, Marty, you can see we're defining our building envelope along that 50-foot western edge of the Class 2 buffer. But you can see that just to the northwest of where the cursor is there, to the west there, towards Dorset, other way. there's a little dog leg that is within the 100-foot buffer, but not within the 50-foot buffer. But it's so narrow, commonsensically, we couldn't justify determining that would be part of your 30-foot buildable area. There's, very high risk of the 50-foot wetland buffer impacts if that was part of our designated area. And then if you go to the west, if you just move the image to the west, you'll see there's a small area there that's outside a 50-foot state wetland buffer, but obviously is on an island and is inaccessible other than a major wetland impact. So that area we felt wouldn't qualify as a 30% buildable area either. And then the next step, third, just says land within habitat blocks, excluding core habitat block areas or areas which would sever habitat block. And as Marla said, those terms are not defined. The connectors are, but core habitat block is not. And we're showing that area in yellow. You can see it's associated with, and you'll see why these applications are both in front of you at the same time. The area that's designated in yellow is where the path of least resistance is, or the straightest path to get a driveway from Windswept Lane, a public road, to the 6-acre NRP lot to the south of the subdivision that's being proposed. And with that driveway connection, it significantly fragments. You can see the tree line shown in that wavy black color that's around the yellow area. The driveway significantly or substantially cuts that area in half. We have access from one point from public roads. Dorset Street access, in my opinion, is not realistic given the wetland impacts. Autumn Hill Road's a private road maintained and owned by the homeowner association. We can't add additional units off of that private road. So the only place to access either one of these new units would be from the 60-foot right-of-way associated with Windswept Lane, or Windswept Lane. The tennis court determines that connection has to be on the western side, and by the time you install a driveway, grade, bring in water, sewer, power, possibly gas. In our opinion, that area makes a lot of sense to be designated as part of the 30% buildable area. You also see there's a stormwater pond, as we're going to trigger state stormwater requirements within that area as well.
Excuse me, is Windswept Lane, that appears to be existing, right, all the way down through your parcel? Would you have to extend it, or is it in fact already there?
It ends right at the parcel boundary, and when it was in, and I think it's still the case now, a right-of-way has to be extended to the adjacent parcel. So the 60-foot right-of-way, public right-of-way.
When you say public right, is Windswept Lane a public street now?
Yes, it is.
All right. Has any area south of where you say it now ends been dedicated, or
My understanding is Windswept Lane has been adopted by the city council, yeah.
pardon?
I believe it has been adopted, yes. It is a public road.
So there's an existing legal right-of-way, even if it's not developed. Is that what you're saying?
It is developed. Windswept Lane is fully built
No,
out.
you're talking about different things.
Oh,
I'm talking about the continuation.
okay. Yeah, no, so that's a proposed driveway. Windswept Lane has been constructed. Our proposed driveway shown from our property line to the south is proposed.
Okay.
That is a private driveway.
All right. And that you're not proposing that to become a public road?
No.
Keep it. All right.
Nope.
I'd like to add, in fact, we can have the Goldbergs join in here. The Goldbergs own the land to the north where all the houses are now that you can see. And they developed that, and they put in Windswept. It ends, you can see there's a hammerhead there where it absolutely dead ends. And I remember being at the Planning Commission meeting when they were talking about that. And it was said that it should be designed as a hammerhead just in case the Bulldogs ever want to develop their 16 acres on the south. And so it comes right up to our border. There's a fire hydrant there. There's, we used to have pigs there. Now there's a fire hydrant. So there's water, sewer, underground, utilities underground. That's what we'd tap into.
So the whole area running south from the windswept, from that border with the northern property is part of your buildable area. Is that right?
That's correct.
All the road.
That's correct. And as part of that buildable area, you're allowed 30%, as we talked about. With the 16.46 acre parcel, the total buildable area possible is 4.92 acres. If you add up the green, the peach, and the yellow, we're proposing 4.46. So roughly 3/10 of an acre less than what would be allowed.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, ready to move on? Number 4, staff considers the applicant should apply this approach for this property and recommends the board direct the applicant to prepare a map showing clearly how the revised area was selected, including indication of areas selected under each of the above 4 criteria. Since this exercise has the potential to significantly modify the development configuration for the carve-out, staff recommends the board direct the applicant to prepare this map prior to concluding the sketch plan meeting.
So that's the one we just did.
Did we just do that? You made me read all that?
We didn't want to interrupt you.
Well, it sounds like
Sorry.
Marla.
You're on a roll.
Thanks,
Wait a minute. It
guys.
sounds like Marla wants something more. I'm
Yeah,
not
I have
sure.
a question though. Can you go back to the map, the new map, Marty? So it's a 2-acre carve out, and then, oh, this is confusing. And then the sum of the buildable area that you're requesting is not within the 2-acre carve out.
That's correct.
Okay, I think that's okay. We'll think about that. That sounds okay.
Otherwise,
right.
it'd be a very strange lot.
Yeah, well, our 30%
because
is
it's
based
2
on
lots,
the
right?
parent 16-acre parcel, so I think
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
I'm glad we're doing these applications at the same time.
number 5. This is about combined review. Given the purpose statement above, staff recommends the board consider permitting the applicant to combine preliminary and final subdivision review. No master plan review is required.
Yeah, we would appreciate to do it combined if the board's okay with it.
Okay, good. Moving on to number 6. We need a detailed plan for the development of land. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe in detail their plan for development of the land proposed for subdivision.
I assume you mean by this the parent parcel. What? I assume you mean by this the parent parcel, or the whole thing.
The 2-acre parcel.
Oh, the 2-acre parcel. A residence there, and of course, a single residence now, according to Act 47, can now be a duplex, and an ADU can also be established there. We would abide by the regulations that are required for this, but we have not yet decided whether it's going to be a townhouse, or a single dwelling unit. If we need to commit at this time, we can, but I don't think we have to. We would follow the appropriate setbacks and edge setbacks and so forth. That's it.
Yeah, we are showing 2 water services and 2 sewer services. So if it is a duplex, we'll be able to accommodate.
Okay, thank you. Number 7. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to propose a regularly shaped buildable area to be defined by either a natural or man-made barrier that enables compliance over time.
So yeah, I believe this is applicable to the building envelope, and I think the 30% exercise we just walked through made the building envelope substantially, I would say, cleaner than what we had before. So there is some of it that the western edge, maybe the northwestern edge, is following the 50-foot state designated wetland buffer, but it gets pretty typical and square as you go to the northeast and south corners. So we feel that this type of orientation is clear. Generally, state wetland rules require a demarcation of wetland buffers if you're impacting within 25 feet. So if the home is sited within 25 feet, we would expect that the city would require us to demarcate that wetland buffer. Usually it's with boulders or birdhouses or a split rail fence, something like that. So.
Okay. Questions? Okay, number 8. Once a revised development area is determined based on the standards of 12.06, staff recommends the board ask the applicant to demonstrate how a home or multifamily home, depending on the applicant's objectives, could be located with a reasonable size cleared buffer and appropriate driveway and parking area in the buildable area.
Yeah, so you can see the previous building envelope. It was a little tight. We had put a duplex footprint on that lot. It did fit with room to spare, but given the expanded building envelope, we don't feel citing a house or a duplex should be a problem.
Marla, does that satisfy you as a response?
I think so. It has numbers on it. 102 by 321.
Yeah,
Not
it's
bad.
about 100 foot wide now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the board want to see a potential configuration at the next stage of review, or are they okay with leaving it an empty space?
I think it's okay as it is.
Given the size of it,
Right.
I think it's okay. I mean, 100 by 300 lot.
Okay.
You know,
Thank you.
buildable area shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, moving on. Number 9, staff considers the use of the carve-out provision exempts this project from a provision of a master plan, and any subsequent subdivision of the remaining lands will be required to pursue a master plan. Staff recommends the board to affirm their agreement with this interpretation.
We agree.
Okay,
But that's not what that says at all, Don. That says staff recommends the board affirm their agreement with this interpretation.
what do you think, board? Okay.
Yeah.
Any no's? No, okay. Good. Moving on. Oh,
If I understand correctly, any further subdivision would be extremely arduous, if not impossible, wouldn't it? Given the nature of this property?
Further subdivision of the 16-acre lot or
I assume you're talking about the 16, right?
Yes.
Right. I mean, that would be almost impossible, wouldn't it?
it would be the corner?
The rules they are a changing.
Yeah.
I want to go into that.
Yeah,
Because it gets really confusing really fast.
yeah.
And the Baldocs are very patient and have been attending those planning commission meetings and probably understand it at least as well as I do.
Okay, so can we just affirm, yep, they'll need a master plan, all right, and move on, right, okay.
okay.
Hold on. You say we will need a master plan?
No.
Yeah, if we come in again.
Subsequent.
Certainly. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay, I think that's it for this sketch plan. And I'm assuming you want to stay put,
Yes.
or,
You have everything you need for your next submission?
I believe so, yeah.
okay. Any recusals or disclosures? No. Didn't think so. Okay. This is a conditional use application CU 2403 of Allison M. Baldock Trust and Vincent L. Baldock Trust to develop a single-family home and accessory dwelling unit on .70 acres of an existing 6-acre lot located entirely within the southeast quadrant and natural resource protection zoning district at 1780 Dorset Street. So do you want to give us a little introduction?
I think what I said before may be adequate. This is the 6 acres that was in existence before 1992, which has special significance in the regs, and it's entirely treed. And our daughter Michelle is the one who would like to build a house there. It doesn't. You can see where it's planted. I want to point something else out that has some relevance. After, if you'd zoom out instead, the other way instead, see exactly to the west of where that 6-acre parcel is. Yeah, that's 45 acres that I was referring to. That goes down to the Shelburne line. And you can see the city has a water treatment facility there. We've given them the easement for that. It's that'll all be in the current use program as well. It's the field on the left that the farmer takes hay for his herd, and on the right side of it, to the right of the stream, is an area that we're working on to develop into forestry. But this other lot is a beautiful piece of land. You can see it's primarily pine trees and hemlock trees on the eastern side of the 6-acre parcel, and it's deciduous hardwoods on the other side, on the eastern side of it. And unfortunately, almost all of the maples that we use for sugaring are to the north of it on our 16-acre piece, but the trees in here are mostly and I actually brought the survey from the forester. They're mostly ash, which are diseased by something called ash yellows, and they're dying even before the emerald ash borer gets them. On the other hand, it's very good firewood. And the other is beech. There's beech scale on it. And unless we get temperatures of 40 degrees below zero for more than 30 hours, that's just going to continue its march of killing beech trees. And the couple of foresters we've had come look at it and say that's really the only way to handle them. Anything that's any bark that's smooth, we've never touched, because maybe that is the tree that has the right DNA that'll can help us in the future. But almost all of them are dying and they're rotting from the top down and the bottom up, and it's quite dangerous to work around them. Anyway, that's what characterized. There's also a little bit of basswood in there. But the 0.7 acres that you see there is where her lot would go. And the ADU is the small little box next to it. I'll recap what I said before on one point. We think it's important to have it that size, even though 0.7 is not large. By some standards it is. But just to get away from the trees that are falling. They're losing their branches. But also, our daughter, like us, wants to do solar, like we've done so much of. And so she needs room to take care of the crown to minimize that. But other than that, all of that will be in the current use program too. It's really nice working with foresters who understand these things and can give us some good tips on how to manage it and help us. So that's all I have for prelude to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's go through the questions. Number one. I'll just read the end of this. Why was the specific size chosen, and would it be less impactful to be smaller or in a different location? How are the specific characteristics of the SEQ district protected by the proposed building envelope? So why is this proposal less impactful?
Sure. If you'd
Could
put
you
it,
just explain that maybe?
well, let me explain it a little bit more. If you put the map back up, please, Marty. The access to this, there's actually a right-of-way going directly west through the wetlands to Dorset Street, and that's just ridiculous to consider crossing that and come in. If we did that, then you might think that the the building envelope should go on the west, but that just doesn't make sense by anyone's calculus. And to go further up the hill onto the right would make the driveway much more impactful, and and that doesn't make any sense either. So this is really kind of the shortest distance between 2 points from windswept to this point. And
So you're trying to thread a
why.
needle to.
Yeah, it's going right through the middle of them. And the forester looked at it and said, "Yeah, it makes sense. Some of these trees just have to come down. They're dangerous, and it's a kind of a median location that makes the most environmental sense, we think."
Mm-hmm.
And the current use survey will actually go around this 0.7 acre lot. It'll go to the west of it, to the south of it, and to the east of it. They're very flexible in doing that.
Board, questions? Hearing none, let's move on. Number 2, I'm going to read this. If I can expand my screen, there we go. Staff recommends the board discuss whether, based on the applicant's response to I above, the building envelope should be sized at 0.7 acres, keeping in mind that the minimum lot size in the zoning district, even before adjustments to comply with Act 47, is 9,500 square feet.
Yeah, so this seems like it's just in kind of the same question about minimizing the building envelope. Vince has already mentioned a whole bunch of things. I would just add on there that there's roughly 8 to 10 feet across the site, so we're going to have to do grading on either side. Obviously, with a minimum lot size of 9,500, you assume that that's fronting a public road. Everything's built at the same time. There's no existing trees to worry about. Planting any orchards or any other, trees have to be within this building envelope. Sheds have to be within this building envelope. We're showing an ADU. There's another comment about the type of turnaround that's shown at the end of the driveway. It's roughly 600 feet long, so there will have to be a type of turnaround at the end of the driveway for plowing, delivery vehicles, or whatever that may be. So we feel that 0.7 acres in this context is reasonable.
I was also impressed by the concern about falling trees. I have a very small lot. I have 80-foot evergreens surrounding me, which I like very much, and they've begun to scare the hell out of me.
Yeah. You can do a lot of damage.
They do, and we barely just way outside it, but it was traumatic, so I'll recite it. Next door to us, there was a house with 2 little children. We had a huge willow tree in one corner, and we knew it needed work, and we had a plan with Barrett's to come and take it down, and it got delayed, and a huge split piece of half the trunk fell off diagonally across the lot next door. If the kids had been in the yard, they're dead.
Oh, God.
And so in other words, that point strikes me heavily for that reason.
Right.
And I think it's a legitimate one.
If I can add to that, we have, I agree completely. It's terrifying. I've had some stuff fall very close to me when I've been working in the woods. I might not be here if I'd been a couple of feet over. And in a wind, as you saw, our house is very close to some other trees. And in a wind, I sleep with one eye open. It's really possible we could get hit with that. And we just today agreed to have a forester come and for over $1,000 take down a tree that's leaning towards the house. But they're exceedingly dangerous, of course.
I would ask you this, just to cover the base. I assume that the city arborist would underwrite what you're saying about the trees on your lot.
Oh, anyone, it would. It's just common sense. We've had the arborist out before, but yeah. The other thing is we would feel a little more worried about taking down 0.7 parts of an, 0.7% of an acre, if we hadn't planted so darn many trees ourselves. And not only on this property, but also on other properties where we've planted tens of thousands of trees.
That's
And
not really
so-
directly relevant. You know, let's
you're
try
right.
to-
You're right.
But,
But I think morally, I'm a big environmentalist, and morally, we're on the right side of it, I think. Thank you, though.
So if I can just add to that as well,
Allison, you have to come use a mic because we have some, sorry.
well, then just say that the forester, state forester and the city, we've had two different ones come out.
We've had three. Yeah, we've had three. We've had the city arborist, the county forester, Ethan Tapper, and now the forester we've hired. There's agreement on what we've got to do here. Thank you.
I
In
just
other words,
realized-
20-foot apple trees wouldn't impress me the same way.
Yeah.
Okay. I just realized that in addition to forgetting to introduce my colleagues, I did not swear you in for this hearing.
Well, you didn't swear them in for sketch because there's no swearing at
Right,
sketch. But
right.
then we switched to conditional use, so I think it's understandable.
So would any of you who agree to testify, please raise your hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
And does this apply to what you've said so far?
Yes, it does.
Always the lawyer. Thank you, Frank. All right, number 3. This is related to driveway design. Question about a straight driveway to reduce the building envelope size.
Yeah, so, I talked about the driveways roughly 600 feet long. There will be some type of turnaround. Right now, we're showing a circular driveway. We think it fits well. There is an ADU also being asked for as part of this application. We would prefer a circular drive rather than a larger hammerhead or something like that. We feel it is more, reasonable for a residential use.
How do they compare in terms of coverage?
They're about equal. We're subject to city stormwater standards either way. But I would say they're reasonable. I would say a hammerhead is probably less, but given the context of our conversation, neither one of them is going to fit within the 7/10 building envelope.
Nona and Renee. Nona and Renee.
I apologize.
Let me add, if you look at the top right of that, and even if you zoom out, you'd see it even better how long Autumn Hill Road, our driveway is. Yeah, truckers have a very hard time on that. And see the parking space between our two buildings, between our residence and our guest house right there. It's just not enough for the oil truck sometimes, and sometimes we got a utility truck, and so they have to back out all through the woods along that driveway, and they don't appreciate it. Not that we want, a 5-acre parking lot so that, a 16-wheeler can turn around, but that's just, the circular driveway doesn't seem excessive to me.
And if you look in where Windswept Lane ends, you can see the size of a public turnaround for a city plow truck. If you look at our circular driveway layout, obviously we're not trying to turn around city plow trucks, but it's substantially smaller, I would say, less impervious than the public type turnaround. So I feel it's a residentially appropriate type of turnaround for that driveway.
Can a fire truck get there and go around?
A fire truck would not be able to make that turn, no.
So they would have to back up.
A fire truck would have to back up.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there room for a fire truck to back up?
Yeah, it's a 600-foot long driveway that will be, 15, 16 feet wide. We'll have a gravel base that will support a fire truck, and there is the public turnaround right at the end of Windswept Lane.
I'm sorry, there's a public turnaround on the other side of that lot, right?
Right there. Yep.
So if a fire truck came in to service this house at the end of the driveway,
Mhm.
it would have to travel 600 feet, back up 600 feet.
Beep,
Right.
beep, beep, beep,
Yep.
beep, beep.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah,
Okay.
got to get in quick, but usually there's not a huge rush to leave. So.
In situations like this, the fire department does require a PEX sprinkler system.
Yep, I think they're 250 feet from public right away or something like that. So we're well past that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the turnaround from, I think it's the different, there has to be some kind of turnaround capacity there. This is aesthetically better, and I'm gathering that the difference between a hammerhead, for example, and this is kind of immaterial from any kind of environmental standpoint.
Does anyone not agree with that? Okay, let's move on. Number 4, as laid out in concurrent sketch plan application SD 2404 for the adjacent lot, staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide a map showing how this approach has been applied for this property, including indication of areas selected under each of the above 4 selection criteria.
So we did submit a plan that shows this as well. Marty, if you go to the ortho one for the conditional use. The second one.
With the new.
Second one. Yep. So it's the same exercise that we went through on the northern lot, except for it's much simpler. So the first step is any land that's not part of a hazard or level 1 resources, where the existing house is on the north lot, we're showing in green. Obviously, everything here is within a habitat block. So we fall under that 30 or 70% substantially covered habitat block criteria. The next step is designating land not characterized by a preponderance of mature trees. The entire lot is wooded, so it's in the NRP. And then the next step is lands within the habitat block, excluding core habitat block or areas which would sever habitat block connection. No connectors are shown within this lot, so we feel we're showing it in the most direct access route given the driveway layout shown. So we're showing it in the middle of the lot on the northern end. So what's shown in yellow is our 30% designation for habitat block modification. And if you do the math, 30% of the 6 acres would allow 1.8 acres. We're designating it's 0.75. It's slightly more than the building envelope because the driveway has to cross the boundary and get into the building envelope, which is why it's slightly bigger, but significantly less than the 30%. So.
I'm sorry, there's something I didn't follow on the second point. Would you repeat the second point?
So we're allowed 1.8 acres.
No, not that. You went through the 4 criteria.
Yep.
You said land not characterized by a preponderance of mature trees.
Yep.
And it's all covered.
It's all covered with trees.
That's
No,
correct.
it's not a differentiator.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So then we go to the third category, which, in this case, there's really no differentiator from anything else on the parcel other than the NRP regulations on their own require us to make minimal impact to the lot. So we're showing about half of the habitat block modification that we could be solely based on the habitat block regulations, but the NRP ones are more restrictive. So we're only designating about half the area that we otherwise could.
Satisfied? Okay. Number 5, these standards apply to the area outside the building envelope in order to facilitate compliance with A, B, and C, staff recommends the board consider requiring the applicant to modify the building envelope to have easily measurable dimensions, right angles, and to be tied to permanent reference markers established in the field.
So if you want to put that plan up, Marty, we're showing the building envelope is the major dimensions are a square, so it's 156 by 208 feet. I think what this comment's referring to is the edges are rounded off. So we could square that up and add a few, maybe a tenth or two to the total buildable area. We think that either a condition of approval that the clearing limits get surveyed, get staked out prior to clearing, will establish that tree line. We feel it's enforceable. If the board would rather see those edges squared off, we're happy to do that. It is less impact the way we're showing it, but it seems to be a subjective regulation. So.
Questions?
One other location question. What's the purpose of not moving the buildable area so it's contiguous with the northern lot line, which extends the driveway out an extra 25 or 30 feet?
Yep. Yeah, so there is a setback that's required. The building envelope, by definition, you can cite a structure within any part of the building envelope. So building envelopes typically include setbacks.
Okay.
So that's the reason why it's not tugged or uptight to that northern boundary.
Wait a minute, but how would the setback, what is the setback? What's the applicable setback distance?
It's probably a front yard, 20 feet.
How much?
A front yard setback of probably 20 feet.
So would that really, that doesn't explain your choice then. I mean, you'd still have plenty of room for your 20-foot setback if you moved. You're talking about moving the northern border to be coextensive with the lot line, right?
Yeah, I was just curious as to why they.
Yeah, I think he's.
The explanation didn't register with me.
Well, I took the question as why didn't we draw the building envelope, which is that dash red line? Why does it not turn 90 degrees and follow the northern lot line, the width of we're showing clearing, and then come back to where it is? That's how I took that question.
You asked the question, but I took it to mean why is not the whole northerly limit of your buildable area coextensive with the lot line?
Because we have to consider setbacks as far as.
But you only
building
need a
envelope.
20-foot setback.
Yeah,
But you don't need a setback for the lot, do you? You need
For a
setbacks
structure.
apply to
It's not a
structures.
subdivision.
Pardon?
It's not a subdivision. It's just the building envelope.
So
Right.
does the building envelope need a setback, or is this the setback part of the building envelope?
Well, I mean, I suppose you could have the building envelope coincident with the lot line, but then you wouldn't be able to use the first 20 feet of it.
Right.
So then, okay.
But you could, if that's your designated area, I do kind of agree with Frank's point that it seems kind of silly to have a 20-foot area that you can't even turn into lawn between the building envelope and the lot line.
I mean, you could save 20 feet of paving just by moving the whole thing, if that's 20 feet. I mean, if you moved it all, do you have any objection to making it coextensive with the lot line?
No, whether the whole thing ships, I don't think that's a problem.
No, that's
Shift it north, yeah.
Yeah, it would make sense. I mean, from just a description standpoint as well, right? Then you can go, easterly along the northern property line to the right angle, and then go southerly, and then go, westerly. And
Well, he doesn't want a right angle, but
Right. Well, I mean, how else would you describe the?
you could say around the curve, describe that. There are surveyors have a way to describe that curve.
Yeah. So,
Makes things easier.
yeah, and the building envelope is it's a zoning thing. So whether or not it's established on a plat by meets and bounds.
Well, but it needs to be enforceable, right? Like if somebody from Windswept calls and says, "Oh my God, Michelle has cleared the whole darn thing," I
Yep.
need to be able to go out there and say,
Yeah, but
this is
Yeah.
where you can clear to. You can't clear this whole thing. And so that's why we were suggesting right angles. And I would say even at the expense of having a slightly larger building envelope,
Okay.
because then it's enforceable.
Uh,
Whereas I can't go out there and say this is a 30-foot arc.
well, but if it's staked, you can. I mean, I don't think that minor convenience for the enforcement entity
Well,
is
would you accept something that's like a permanent stake then?
yeah,
Okay, because I mean a stake is a stake, but then like a permanent bound, even
yeah.
if it's a metal
Yeah.
pipe.
Put a monument in there. You know, you're going to have it surveyed, right? It's going
Oh,
to
yeah.
be surveyed.
Yeah. So
So there'll be a way. So we can have it stipulated that there must be a way to distinguish the perimeter.
okay. So when I said stake it out, what I meant by that was we would go out and survey a clearing limit. We generally do that anyway, but when
There'd be monuments.
there could be monuments.
Well, maybe. Well, okay. Well, that's a good point to raise. There shall be monuments. Right? How about that?
If the board feels that's necessary. If we clear to that limit, there will be a very obvious mature tree to lawn break.
And marked by monuments. Right?
Okay. If the board feels monumentation is necessary, I personally feel it's overkill.
So there's something to enforce. Right?
And probably makes it
Perhaps there
easier
isn't
for you to
a
do
monument
rectangle.
need if you just make it right angles, right?
yeah, if the board wants right angles, that's nothing we're against. If
Yeah. Yeah, there is a stone wall right along that dotted line. It's quite old, but there's a stone wall there, and we've been gradually cleaning out the barbed wire in there. So there are round circles, balls of barbed wire about this big every 50
so
or
maybe that's why you're not at the property limit.
No, I mean, I'd be very happy. I'm sure my wife would to move it up to the northern boundary.
And the virtue of that, of course, is you save some
Sure.
coverage area.
Yeah, you
You're
save a couple
saving
of feet
some-
of driveway.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, I don't want to preempt it. What does the board think about the squaring off of the
Yeah.
lot?
Yeah. Yeah, and my wife's reminded me we wouldn't need a monument if we had the stone wall. It's a substantial stone wall. I mean, I can't move the stones in that.
The stone wall describes that entire
north
squared
by-
off circle, circled off square.
No, it runs east to west along the northern boundary.
Oh, it runs there.
Yeah. So we could use that as the marker up to the stone wall. It's done all over New England, I'm sure.
It would define the extent to the north.
So,
Yeah.
what about if we, once the houses are in, what if we were required to submit a record drawing to the city that shows dimensions to the building envelope from the existing structures? Generally, we do that. We call them tie sketches. That's how the public works folks find water shutoffs or sewer services or what have you. You know, a zoning administrator going out there with a metal detector trying to find monuments might be tough. But
Why isn't it a routine part of the survey?
no, so we're not. This is establishing a building envelope. It's not a subdivision. So the survey will just determine where the existing lot lines are for the 6-acre parcel, but there's no subdivision being done here.
Okay, so
You
you
know-
don't want to technically survey.
Again, we're happy to move it right up to the border.
Yeah, we can move it north 20 feet. That's no problem. If the board wants us to square off the corners, that's no problem. That's
Okay, if there's no problem, that's fine.
okay.
Okay.
So,
I-
board, do we think we have enough information to make a decision?
Well, do we need to see the revised plan with the squared off buildable area? Or not?
It sounds adequately specific to me that it can just be conditioned.
Yeah, I think it's, and squared off doesn't really change over the overall building envelope area. I mean, it goes from.
Doesn't change the area, it moves it. But
Oh, you're moving it up to accommodate the
Squaring it off will increase it
Five.
a tiny bit.
thousands of an acre. Yeah, so.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing.
Second,
Well, no one moved yet. Moved, okay.
okay.
second. Thank you, Frank. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. It's carried. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much for your due deliberations on this.
Thank
Should you ask for questions from the audience or?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Are there any public comments?
I have one.
Online.
Okay,
I'm Charles Scott. Can you hear me?
yes,
I'm Charles Scott. I have the property just east of this lot. And I want to say that I am in favor of this. I think the idea of getting land where your child can build a house is a wonderful idea. I know this particular daughter has just gotten engaged, and she and her husband will be most likely, her future husband, most likely will be selling their houses because they have two of them. And it opens up more residence for people in South Burlington. So I'm in favor of this.
very good. Thank you very much. And congratulations. Any other comments? Yes.
Elizabeth Goldberg, and we live on Winston.
I think we'd like you to come up so we could hear you, please.
Elizabeth Goldberg. We live at the end of Windswept Lane, the south end, which would abut the north end of the Bulldog property. I am in favor of this as well, and we have lived next to the Bulldogs for 30 plus years, and there are no better stewards to the land than the Bulldogs have demonstrated. So we are totally in favor of it.
Nice. We'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Good evening. Christopher Ruggiero. I live at 250 Autumn Hill Road. We moved there in 2010, my wife and I and our two kids, now have two kids. We are neighbors with Vince, and we bought the property from Scotty, who just testified before, and we are in favor of this project too, and look forward to having some more neighbors on our quiet hill.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Since I'm not the actual applicant, I can say something as a South Burlington resident. My name is Michelle Cannon, and I'm Vince and Allison's daughter and Andrew's sister, and have been a resident of South Burlington for, I grew up here, raised my children here, work right over there, and I am certainly in favor of this, and have, under the tutelage of my parents, certainly would like to carry forward their desire to steward the property as they taught me. My children grew up in the woods there. I remember birthday parties and lots of treasure hunts and lots of child play dates in the woods, and I look forward to providing a location for future grandchildren to do that, and a place for my parents as they grow older to have a place to move to that's not quite as cumbersome as where they currently live. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. The mass has ended. You may go. Thank you.
Go in peace.
Go in peace. I have a question. Does anyone have an iPhone or iPad charger with them? I
do. I can help you.
I charged it before I left, but
If someone has a USB plug, to convert to an
Got a
actual
cable,
outlet.
you need a brick. You might be able to plug it into Marla's laptop.
Thank
Steal a USB charge.
oh, you high-tech people.
Knowledgeable people.
Do you think that'll work?
Should.
All right.
If it's a
I'll
powered
do mine.
USB.
I'll plug in mine and
Or-
see
or-
if it works.
Quinn's isn't plugged in either.
Before you do that, let me plug mine.
Reach Charlie's. His is plugged into power.
It should be. I charge my cell phone out of my laptop all the time.
Okay. So you. Oh, right there. Oh, right, because it's not a laptop; it's a iPad, so it might be.
You just might want to
Nope.
plug your laptop in, Marla.
Yes.
Because it'll
Suck
get
one battery
not
down to the
drained
other.
Touching
quite
stuff.
quick.
So my goodness, this is going to work. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that was something.
Yeah.
Ski electrons.
Remind me to give it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Control your device.
oh, you can, change your life around with this stuff. Okay, agenda item. I don't have it. Hold on. Bear with me, please. Does anyone have the agenda up in
I
front
do.
of?
Item 7.
Would you read that, please?
Sure. Combined preliminary and final plat application SD 24-4 of Gary Bourne to create a general planned unit development by re-subdividing 3 existing lots into 3 new lots of 0.1 acre, lot 1, 0.14 acre, lot 2, and 1.06 acre, lot 3, and constructing a 3,350 square foot financial institution on lot 1, a 6,480 square foot now I'll turn my mic on. Square foot 2-story mixed commercial and residential building on lot 2 containing 2 market rate units and 1 inclusionary unit, and a 3-story 27-unit multifamily building on lot 3, of which 9 units are proposed to be inclusionary, 760 Shelburne Road.
Thank you, John. So welcome again. Would you like to introduce yourself again?
My name is Greg Rabideau. I'm from Rabideau Architects here in South Burlington, representing the project. And with me also is Jennifer Destels, a project civil engineer from Trudell Consulting Engineer.
Sure.
I know that Gary Bourne, our applicant, is listening online this evening, and I believe that Jeff Nick, who is the commercial broker handling this project on the real estate end, is also with us this evening.
Now, are Jeff and Gary likely to testify?
I would ask Gary to swear in if he can.
Okay. All right. So, Gary, if you could, can we see you?
There he is.
There he is. All right. If you would all raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay.
You may also want to have Kelly swear in as well. She might provide testimony.
Thanks, Lucy. And Lucy as well, just in case.
Kelly, who's Kelly?
Kelly is the project architect representing the financial institution.
Okay. Kelly, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. We've been through this many times. I'm sure you know the drill.
Yep.
Do you have any very brief statements before we dive into the staff report?
No, I feel like there are 13 red line comments in the staff comments. Those are the issues that we will need to address as a group this evening. And they sort of roughly fall into 4 categories. The first category being the appearance of the bank, the second category being the project affordability component. And the remaining issues are sort of site dimensional, detail-y kind of things. That we will address in detail as we look at each of these 13 questions.
Okay, let's dive in.
So,
Is anyone recused or conflicted? No. Okay. First comment. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe why did they not make any changes?
The folks for the Chase Bank can talk to this directly, but I will point out that the measurements to determine the amount of glazing on those facades and the percentage of opacity was submitted in response to this staff comment. Wanted to find out that members of the board had received that forwarded item.
Sorry, are you saying you submitted something new?
Lucy submitted some documentation from Chase Bank that never made it to our office prior to the last submittal. We received that and submitted.
Oh, okay.
Lucy
So,
sent an email
so Marty
to-
can get that pulled up now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
So that's different than what we're seeing here.
The Chase Bank elevation is the same. I'll let them speak to that. But the glazing question that is in the comments, there's some additional information submitted about that. And I think the architect Kelly can speak to why the elevation remained the same between the prior submittal and this submittal. There is some, I think, valid reasons to describe how we get to this point.
Okay. All right. Talk to us about this, please.
Kelly, are you
Yeah.
listening?
Yes. So the elevations remain the same because we had submitted these similar elevations with opaque glazing at the faux two-story level. And during a previous meeting, it was discussed that the board would like to see the windows as transparent so that light shines through them. And so we made that revision. And after that meeting, before we made the changes from opaque glass to transparent, we had received comments in a form of a final response in August of last year that stated that the board felt that the appearance of the two-story had been met, and that is why we did not make any changes to the elevation. And as far as the additional documents that were submitted, that is just calculations explaining that the transparent versus opaque glazing requirements have been met, as well as the ratio of glass to solid facade along Shelburne Street and the secondary street, Swift Street, that has been met as well. So that is what those elevations show, and they're just line drawings, elevations without color, and they have the charts showing those calculations.
And then there's some reasons, Kelly, as to why there is not windows in that one section of the building that came up at this last sketch plan hearing, correct? Having to do with bathrooms in that location.
Sure. The most important reason why we would not like to put glazing at that rear portion is because that is the back of house, and that is what holds the most important components of the branch, safes, cash chest, etc. And putting glass at those areas would impact security greatly. And in a building that is already a lot of glass, a lot of areas of transparency there, we wanted to maintain a very secure area at that back of house area, which is the stone portion of the building.
That is a decent functional explanation for why it's there. And we have limited, as long as they're meeting the glazing percentage, I'll look to Marla to confirm that we are. We shouldn't, you don't have to answer now. I want to get to what I want to say. Would you folks consider, I mean, this is a fairly common urban device. I mean, it's pretty in your face, the blank wall. And would you consider a mural there? Or, you know, I just throwing an idea. Is that the kind of thing you might entertain? to kind of spruce it up a little bit.
I'm not willing to offer that. I mean, Chase can jump in if they want to, but speaking as an architect, I don't think there's anything wrong with having solid surfaces in a building. You know, the relationship between solid and transparent is one of the things we manipulate to create an image. I think the bank has taken reasonable steps to address the technical compliance aspects of that, but in the end, they should be able to present a building they'd like to build, and that's where we're at. I don't think there's, because this doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of an overall composition. Most of that blank wall is going to be facing the building next door. It's not facing the street.
Frank, I would also just note at the landscape architect for the project, there is planting in front of it. So it won't be a completely solid facade from the road. There will be some planting and some vegetation in front of it that would break up that massing as well.
I'm not offended by what I see there. It's not my design, so you know I'm not patting myself on the back to say I think it's entirely appropriate for its location, and there's plenty of glazing on that building. It's very, as the project architect said, it's pretty transparent.
Well, as they say outside the architectural sphere, de gustibus, right? I'm sorry. 10th grade Latin. Based as a matter of dispute.
That's true, and I think in this issue, the town's not trying to regulate taste as much as they are trying to.
That's why I asked it. Would you consider?
Okay, you're welcome to propose conditions as necessary, but it's not something I would offer.
So for what it's worth, the board at Sketch said that that blank wall looked like it didn't go with the rest of the building. And so the applicant at Sketch said, okay, we'll work on that. And so this comment is, well, it doesn't look like you did any work to it. It's entirely up to the board whether to require them to change it or not. But the board had asked for something and the applicant didn't do it. So we thought it was our obligation to highlight it for the board.
Well, let me ask a question. I mean, do we have any power in the circumstance? It's just an ask, right? And they said no.
No, I mean, the building is required to have the appearance of 2 stories. And so if the board feels like this doesn't
Oh, no,
scratch from that, then.
But it does. Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Yeah, the board has previously commented that the addition of the windows on that upper portion gave the building a 2-story appearance, and I think the calculations have been done. This is their answer. It's not. I would love to just come forward and say yes, we'll do whatever you ask, but this is one of those cases where the client has asked us to defend their idea and to stand by what we've presented.
Any other discussion about this issue before we move on? Okay. Number 2 is regarding the width of the walkway. Let me just finish. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to modify the design to provide a direct 8-foot wide walkway from Swift Street to the principal entrance of the multifamily building, or indicate that it is not their intention to do so, in which case staff considers the board must find this criterion not met.
I have an easy answer to this. We
Yes.
found a solution. We can make the sidewalk 8 feet. So previously we had been stuck on the idea that it interfered with the stormwater treatment practice in that area. We decided, even though it's not ideal, to shift the entire road down 3 feet in order to gain that 3 feet. We feel like that shift is minor enough that it's not really impacting traffic flow, but accomplishes the goal of meeting the 8-foot criteria.
Do you have a plan?
Yes. So I was going to ask that question. Do you have the updated glazing plans and the plans that we submitted earlier today? Okay. I have hard copies, so I could just pass those out if that's easiest.
It'd be good to show it on the screen so that we're all looking at the same thing at the same time.
What was the sheet number? Do you know?
The sheet number. You get that.
I mean, I think you can also pass it out, but I want to make sure we have it up on the screen too.
It is on the new C201, layout and materials.
And then what did you say about a glazing plan?
So there was some miscommunication. So Chase Bank back in August had revised a plan to show the glazing calculations. That plan didn't make it to our office in order to submit to you. So even though the colored elevation plan remains the same, this additional information shows the glazing calculation.
But the actual glazing isn't changed. It's just showing information
Showing
about
that
the number.
glazing requirement is met or exceeded.
So you're going to show us the width of the walkway at 8 feet.
Yes. So on this plan, in that corner next to the stormwater pond, instead of taking away from the stormwater treatment area, the road is just shifted 3 feet to the west towards Shelburne Road, which allows for additional space to meet that 8-foot requirement. That's been a sticking point. So.
Okay. Thank you. Everyone happy with that?
And that still meets the minimum distance from the intersection?
Yes, it does. Yep, we were just trying to maximize that just because there's a lot of traffic in that corner, but if it needs to be done, we found a way to do it.
All right, number 3. This is, we have a need to know the percentage of transparent glazing.
So that was submitted as part of the plan that Marty has up now.
It's the same. I'm sorry. The same calculations appear on the architectural drawings prepared for the other commercial building and the residential building as well. They show up on the elevation sheets. So there's a table within the drawings that were submitted that explains that for the other 2 buildings on the site.
We have that, Marty? Okay, good. Questions? Number 4. This is about bicycle parking location. Staff recommends the board discuss and determine whether they will require improvements to the location of long-term parking in the bank building.
Sure. So the project architect can speak to this about the Chase Bank building, and I know this has come up a couple times, but the applicant would like to keep the interior bike parking as shown on the floor plan. It's in the break room, which has been questioned whether or not that's ideal. Chase Bank feels that that's the best place for it. It is required to be put inside the building. We put it inside the building. I don't think there's anything specific in the LDRs that tells us exactly where inside the building the bike storage needs to be located internally. That's where we're proposing it.
Okay.
So to speak to the board's authority on this matter, you know, as Jen says, there's nothing in the LDR that says exactly where bicycle parking has to be, but there's a lot of emphasis about bike parking being convenient and forefront and whatever, and the board authority has a lot of authority in the case when an applicant is asking for a lot of waivers to impose additional conditions that require the project to better meet other aspects of the LDR. So please don't be afraid of asking for improvements if you feel that they're necessary. That being said, it's up to you to decide what's necessary.
Well, I have a couple of questions. Who was, I gather the long-term bicycle storage, since it's in a building, that will be strictly for employees, right? Okay.
Right.
Is there a required number of racks or
Yes.
a required area, and are they meeting that area within this inconvenient location?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the downside to letting them put them, it's long-term, it's not like the employee's going to be, by long-term, I assume you mean more than a day, or do you mean for the day?
For the day.
Oh, all right, well, that, you know, so convenience encourages the employee to take a bike instead of a car, for example. Well, it's not nothing.
Yeah.
It's a reason.
Staff is sort of in the same place as you, Frank. It's not nothing. It's not the biggest thing.
Are
Not
the
the bill to die on.
Are the employees going to have access to the building through that back door, where I assume that's their break room?
Yeah, they'll have.
I mean, is that where they come and go? I don't know what the Chase security procedures
There'll be
are.
a Prox card reader or a request for entry device at that back door, and you know, so they'll have to use an ID or whatever to get in. But yeah, I imagine I think it's completely reasonable to think that somebody might commute to a job here on a bike.
Right. But they're not having to drag the bike through the lobby.
No, and I don't. I will tell you that most people are paying $2,000-3,000 for a bike now, and that's just for a regular non-electric bike. Bringing that into the office space is going to happen whether we set it up that way or not, just given the value of the equipment. So yeah, I think if I was that person, you know, that teller or whatever, who rode my bike to work every day, hanging it up in the employee break room would be fine, because it's in a little alcove. It's not like it's just sort of next to the coffee table. It's a place unto itself. You know, not unlike a coat closet or something. I don't know how many people will be in the branch bank at one time, but you know, if there's 10 of them and they've got 3 places to park a bike or something, that's pretty good in terms of utilization.
And what's that? What's the table and chairs? That's a break room. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
What, it's adjoining a break room?
That's where you eat lunch. You know, that's basically it.
What's the dimension of that room?
I'd probably say that's probably, you know, 10 by 12.
Okay.
Okay, well, it's 16 by 10 or something. There's no number there, but
All right, so they're rolling the bikes from that entrance to the left.
They're coming in the back entrance, past the kitchenette, and
roll the bike through the break room to the.
Yeah, and it'll probably be wet some days. They'll probably have to wipe it down, but
it's a little messy, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an avid biker, and you know, I mean, it's just the value of the bikes commends people taking care of them, really.
I mean, it's conceivable that nothing would prevent, for example, putting that alcove immediately to the right as you come in the door and relocating the entrance to the break room, wouldn't it? I mean, is there any practical barrier to that? Any reason that couldn't be done?
I don't know the program well enough. I mean, these architects who do these branch banks specialize in them, but I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, I guess the question is how does that become a zoning issue? We don't really regulate the interiors of the plans. But it's a good suggestion. We can take it to them.
Well, we're regulating the convenience of the bike rack, right?
Well, I think
regulating that.
Marla made the point that this project is asking for a lot of waivers. So kind of looking and thinking about the other goals of the overall development. I would echo Frank's suggestion maybe to look into that. I'm thinking, you know, to your point of like bike's wet some days, easy to kind of like say that, but then if you're rolling your bike through, you're late for work and then the break room is like wet and muddy all day, you know. Maybe it doesn't end up being the biggest deal, but just a little bit more convenient. Not gonna super die on that hill, but it seems like a reasonable thing that would improve. And to your point, someone has an expensive bike, they're gonna do it regardless, but it could just make it a little bit better for the employees who aren't riding the bike, and then they're like, oh, every day our break room's all muddy or whatever it is. So those are my thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to be argumentative.
Yeah.
I completely agree with what both you and Commissioner Kochman are saying, but I would like to avoid this kind of issue being a reason for us to not move forward. So
well, you can avoid it very easily. Just comply with a reasonable request.
So
and we move forward happily.
Can I just say, this is one of the reasons that we asked the Chase Bank architect to be present tonight, is so that the civil engineer for the project and the architect for the other buildings was not speaking and defending why the bike.
Well, Kelly is here to speak
Kelly
to
is
this
here,
building.
so Kelly, can you please
Can you explain why that's not equally feasible? Why relocating to the immediately inside the entrance is not feasible?
It's definitely something we can discuss with the Chase team and Chase's designers, and take into consideration. The reason why it was placed in that area to begin with is because we know that the employee lounge is secure from the front of the space, and in our minds, you know, we imagine that someone who is leaving their bike somewhere and going off to the other end of the building would want to know that their bike is secure. And so we put it in the employee lounge for that reason, tucked away behind the wing wall, again, away from the food storage areas, but it's definitely something we can discuss with the team.
I'd appreciate that. And people with $2,000 bikes typically have locks for their bike, don't they?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Oh, yeah. So the security issue isn't much of one.
Kelly, can you confirm what Greg said, that that outside door on the left-hand side of the screen will be available to employees to come in?
Yeah, we would have to, again, confirm that with the designers, but it's something that we can make sure that the employees have access in and out of that space for their bikes. Again, we didn't exactly design it that way right off the bat because employees typically get there half an hour to an hour before the branch even opens. So we know that bikes would be stored and ready to go at that time, at the time that the branch does open. So they could very well go in through the main space, and it's something that we can take back to the designer and confirm.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to yet another bike issue?
Sorry, I have one question about that issue. Is there any scenario where that relocating the bike storage area could be a condition of approval, or that would be something that?
Yeah, absolutely. But if Kelly's gonna come back and say we absolutely can't do that, then where are you? So,
right.
Maybe we get through everything, see where we are, and then give you guys 5 minutes to talk amongst yourselves and see what you want to do.
Thank you.
Okay, number 5, staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide temporary short-term bicycle parking for phase 1 until such time as phase 2 is complete. Any board finding allowing such an alternative should provide a specific location for the temporary spaces.
So we would like to request a waiver for the phase 1 bike racks, but if the board finds that that's not acceptable, we can provide a temporary short-term bike parking area, which is shown on a document that was submitted, a response document that was submitted.
What do we think, board? We're asking for a lot of waivers here. What do you think?
No, I don't. Sorry, where?
What is the time gap between phase 1 and phase 2?
Who knows, Frank? Honestly, I given the cost of construction and interest rates right now, it's a real challenge. So I don't think we'll lead. I think phase 1 will happen immediately. Phase 2, I don't know. It depends. It really depends on the economy.
We're talking about period of years, in other words, potentially.
I don't want to make that kind of estimate, but
18 months, 2 years, wouldn't be surprising.
Would not be surprised. Would not be surprised, or at
All
least
right,
I would
so
like
then
to
it's a real
preserve that
issue.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's certainly reasonable to provide a temporary facility in the interim, and we're willing to do that. And
Yep. And
TCE has shown you on a plan where that would go.
right, it was submitted in the Word document response document that Lucy submitted to your office. It's just right to the north of right there, where the bike. That's like an expanded area that shows some additional bike parking area where the other bike parking area is.
I'm not following. Where it says 2 bike spaces?
Yep, in that kind of whole corner, temporary location for 4 additional bike racks if waiver is not an option. So we can make it work in that location.
Are we good?
When we, I'm not following. So
That's not shown on this drawing, correct? Okay, but it's in that same area. You'd be proposing
and it's-
more bike storage temporarily.
Right.
Not 2 bike spaces.
Right.
Yeah, an additional 4.
Additional 4.
You have a written response to this question.
Okay, 6. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to provide information demonstrating the areas of the proposed inclusionary units.
Yeah, this was on the application. It was actually on the front page of the architectural drawing sheets, or the so-called cover sheet.
That's all we were looking for. Point me in the right direction.
Okay,
Can't find
yeah,
everything.
it's on, and so yeah, that is in the drawings.
And you're gonna testify that these numbers are met, and we'll take your word for it and confirm that later, right? I think
No,
their
we've
minimum habitable area.
we've spelled out the area of the units, and the relationship between them and the market rate units. That's in a tape. That's in tabular form in the drawings.
Great.
Okay.
Number 7 is about affordable rents.
7. No such testament has been made here. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to clarify. Staff notes the computation of housing costs must include rent and utilities pursuant to 18.01D parens 1.
So I did submit separately, and I think it was also included in your response package, a memo dated April 12th, intended to address questions 6, 7, 8, and 9, which are all related to the affordable housing question. What I can say is that we did provide the calculations for each size unit based on the formula of allowable income times 30% divided by 12, which is basically a monthly income allowable to go towards rent. And then in the second part of the chart, it spells out what that means in terms of a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, or a 3-bedroom. What affordable is. Affordable is not a fixed thing, though. It's going to change over the life of the project. And I think it needs to be understood that the way your laws are set up, the city will promulgate a form that goes to landlords, and they'll have to fill that out annually through the city manager's office. So I've shown the fiscal year 23 income limits because that is the most current published data by the government right now. Sometime this year there will be a fiscal year 24 income limit. These numbers may change slightly because of that, but over the life of the project, that will be the mechanism. And so, for instance, an affordable studio apartment would have 1 occupant, and the current affordable rent for a studio apartment is $1,590 a month.
I realize I'm way out of date from when I was intimately involved in affordable housing, when the numbers were set. Right?
Yeah.
Area median income for one person is $80,000, roughly $80,000.
The income.
Yeah, I see what's on the
right.
chart.
Right.
I'm asking you to confirm
for South Burlington metropolitan area, reporting area. Yeah, that's what's reported as median income.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. I mean, the rents are shocking to me. My first apartment was $400 a month.
No, the incomes are shocking to me.
Yeah, the numbers change over time. Yeah,
and this is HUD published.
Yeah, this is government information. This isn't ours.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So coming out of comment 7. Comment 8 and 9 relate to the long-term management plan and the legal documents. And this same document that I've pulled up contains the responses to those staff comments as well. In this case, it's a rental project, which makes the whole discussion a lot simpler. There won't be a lot of legal documents. In fact, I'm not aware of any document that the applicant would create apart from the permit that you give him that would create this requirement and sustain it over time. The city will promulgate the annual reporting form, or at least that's how the regs are written. So the documents that sort of govern this transaction will come from your side of the table. But I assume they exist.
I agree with you. Yeah. I mean the legal document's a lease.
The legal document is a affordability covenant that gets recorded in the land records.
Oh, has legal counsel prepared that? I mean, do you have?
No, the applicant prepares it, and they in fact prepared it for the other application. I was just surprised they didn't resubmit the same darn thing.
I was confused by that then.
All right. So this is not a standard covenant that that our counsel's office produces.
We are trying to get there.
Trying to get there. Well, all right. So that would be something I guess you gotta satisfy.
Yeah, fine. I mean, if it's just submit the document.
I mean, are you happy with what you had submitted before?
Yeah, I'd have to say we are. So.
Would the board accept it if staff transferred the document that they're saying they'd be okay with from the old application to this application?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, has our counsel passed on the covenant?
It's no, but it's only required that they submit a draft legal document, and it was looked to be generally the right thing, and so at the previous denied application, the board found this criteria met. I mean, if they submitted something that said, like, we would like to order pizza for lunch, the board probably would have said, this is not acceptable. But they submitted something that was generally on the right track.
With a commitment to execute it and record it?
Yeah.
All right.
If the board would accept that, I think that
So, I
would
mean,
be
but
acceptable.
how do we address that in the decision? Do we say, shall execute and record an affordability covenant substantially in the form submitted to the board, something like that?
Tell you what.
How do we address that?
Why don't I pull it up on the screen, and then you can say that it was shown into the record.
Great.
Thank you, Marla.
Oh boy, let me move the things here. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to show my screen. So this was the document that was originally submitted. It's got some whereasing. It's an affordable housing covenant. They agree. It's going to have to be changed to be the correct number of units. But again, this is draft, and the whereasing is generally on the right track.
Keep going.
So it's really shall be rented to inhabitants who meet the affordable income limits. Shall be affordable in perpetuity. Income limits are as defined. For example, as Greg said, it changes.
Okay. So, but what I'm asking is, how does that get incorporated? Does that get incorporated into our permit?
So the decision will say the applicant shall finalize the draft affordability documents to the satisfaction of the city attorney and record them prior to issuance of a zoning permit.
Perfectly reasonable.
Oh, thank you for that view. That's very helpful.
I'm sorry.
All right, I think we've covered 8 and 9. And so we move on to 10. This is about the mix of bedrooms. The applicant agreed to do this. However, with the submission, the applicant has not made any changes to the proposal and instead continues to propose 29 two-bedroom units and one one-bedroom unit. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to confirm it was their intention not to make modifications to address the sketch plan comments of the board.
No, I think there might have been some discrepancy in the filings because the table that I described to you earlier that breaks down the size and location of each unit in the building includes a 1-bedroom and a 3-bedroom for the 27 unit building in the back. So we did address that issue. The staff comment says several units, but but I think you'll recall at the hearing that Commissioner Kochman suggested as long as we provided some, that would meet the requirement.
Did you submit a new floor plan? Because we looked at the floor plan for the multifamily building and it looked like they were still all 2 bedrooms.
The one in the packet has a 3-bedroom and 1-bedroom on the cover page.
I know Gary Bourne testified that creating a number of 3 bedrooms can be problematic.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
So will I.
Yep.
On page 8.
I'm sorry?
So will I.
Okay.
1-bedroom and 3-bedroom on it.
Yep. Yeah, ours are probably way at the bottom. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, 102 of 145.
So on the center of that plan, on the bottom of the plan, you can see where we combined a 3-bedroom in it. We took 2 bedrooms and turned it into a 1 and a 3.
So you have 2 1s and a 3 for your diversity. So
We took 2 2s and made a 1 and a 3 out of it.
No, but the overall count.
1 1, 1 3, and 25 2s.
Good enough for me. Let me, short speech, I don't think we should, as long as we can meet the letter of the regulation in this respect, I think this is really a market judgment. I mean, this really is a market judgment to the developer. And beyond that, philosophically, I don't know that we want to be compelling. I mean, something that's been proposed here that I wasn't much in favor of, 40, 30, 450 unit, 450 square foot, basically an SRO. The idea of having moderate-sized family apartments able to house a couple and a couple of children is makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know. That's my speech.
Okay, are we ready to move on?
How do you feel about this one, Dawn? You do housing.
I do housing. Well, I mean, I understand the 3-bedroom dilemma. I also understand that a family with 2 kids might need 3 bedrooms. But from a builder standpoint or a renter standpoint, I know that can be a headache. So I'm of 2 minds. But I also know Habitat gets a lot of applications for 1-bedroom units. So I don't know what to say.
I mean, it's pretty clear from my many, many years in the housing market that people would rather have a 2 or a 3-bedroom unit. People are renting studios and 1-bedrooms because that's what they can afford.
Right.
I think creating more product in general is helping, but we're not going fast enough. But I think another 27 units into the inventory is a positive, especially since 30% of them are going to be inclusionary units.
And there's always bunk beds.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Ready? Let's see.
11.
We have one more. Okay, whoops, on page 29. This is about landscaping among the parking lot.
We did provide some additional documentation to show that we meet this requirement.
Okay. Do we want to see it?
I don't know if the green space behind the dumpster really counts as interior parking lot landscaping. No, nor would I count the green space along the north driveway.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to this section myself so I can read the numbers.
Where's the dumpster?
Bottom right.
All right. Right.
Well, yeah, they should. It says there should be islands planted with trees.
Right.
I don't know if any of that.
Right. So I guess what I can say about that is I think we're a little over. So I'm not sure that the dumpster space needs to be counted, but we do have a tremendous amount of landscaping and really cool walls and site features, including those seagulls, to try to bring this whole site together and make it look really nice. So I know that this is a requirement that needs to be met, so we're showing how we meet that on this site, but I do really think that overall the site is tight. We're getting a lot of housing here, and we worked really hard to make it look aesthetically pleasing and meet this requirement.
Also, I would just say, Marla, if you don't think that some of those pieces should be included in its interior parking lot, then I would propose to, I mean, we've talked about this before, it's kind of a subjective calculation. So I would modify, that drive aisle isn't exactly all interior parking. So I think we would lose a lot of that impervious surface and we would still meet the requirements. And if that's something you'd like us to recalculate, I'm happy to do that.
I would agree with you, Lucy. I would say neither does the green space above the driveway, nor does the driveway need to be included.
So yeah, and this is consistent with what we had done at the last, our last calculation. So I wanted to maintain a consistency with that, but I do believe that we're over here. And if we remove that amount of impervious, so I'm happy to redo that calculation based on those comments, if that's helpful.
So are you talking about taking away a few parking spaces and
No, I'm talking about, Marty, maybe it's the northern drive aisle. If you have got the cursor, yeah, removing that, because I think the goal of the regulation is the interior parking island. And so I was really kind of counting this drive aisle, which is not exactly part of the interior parking area. It's access drive. So, Dawn, I'm proposing to recalculate this based on the removal of some of these that may not be considered part of the interior parking.
But Marla,
Because it's about contiguous spaces.
Marty, I mean, it's kind of nice from a public standpoint. Isn't it kind of nice?
No, so I'm just, nothing will change except how I interpret the numbers for the regulation. We won't change any of the parking spaces. I would just make sure that what we're proposing meets the needs with a slightly different interpretation of what the interior parking island is. Based on, Marla, do you agree with what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the calculation is 10% of the interior of the parking area. So you'd be removing both some area from the denominator, the parking area, and some area from the numerator, the green space.
Correct.
And so I guess I would say that if the board was okay with that as being a condition, I would want there to be sort of a backup plan, and I would propose that backup plan. If that number doesn't work out, you remove the drive aisle. I can also see removing the drive aisle at the bottom to the garage entrance, like that corner. So if you went from the corner of the green little thumb to the corner, diagonal, like Marty just showed, I could see removing that whole thing too. If those numbers don't work out, the condition would be to remove a parking space from the middle, probably where the number 15 is, and make that into an island. You sound confident that both by making those adjustments, it would still meet. And so the repercussion would be you'd lose a parking space.
Yeah, I am pretty confident that it would meet the 10% based on what we're discussing here. I would also, though, like to maybe have, if it didn't, I'd like to have a little bit of flexibility to where that green space goes. And maybe, I think there was a question about if they're planted islands, and this doesn't show the landscaping, but we do meet all the all of our interior kind of tree requirements for shade tree to so these green spaces do have trees. So I might propose to expand I mean, I'd like the flexibility to expand one of those green spaces to provide a larger spot maybe than breaking it up. But if there's a little flexibility, that'd be great. If not, and you want to do it right in the middle, that's also okay.
I have a question for Marla and for Lucy. I think I heard you say, but part of what you would do is remove the tree line along the northern driveway. Is that right?
As part of the calculation. They're still going to keep it. But
Oh,
it's gonna
you're
be
still
out
going
of the
to, you're going to, I see, good, because I really like that. 'Cause from a public perspective, that's an amenity virtually. You know, if you're coming down up Swift Street, you're looking at the trees instead of the parking lot, right?
I totally agree with you,
Okay.
Frank. No, not proposing to add any trees. I think the end result of this discussion would just be potentially the addition of green space if needed interior to the parking areas.
Would the board find that acceptable to make that a condition of approval? It sounds like Marla and Lucy have a solution that would work. Changing the calculation, and if not, we would need to make it work. It seems like there's a pretty obvious solution of removing an additional impervious with removing a parking space if necessary as the backup plan.
So it sounds like on that front, Lucy said flexibility would be preferred. So as far as a condition of approval, if we went that route, would we have to be a bit more descriptive or?
Yeah, I think that the likelihood of this coming up is actually pretty low. Though it does occur to me that northern bike parking was where you said you were going to put the additional temp parking. So that area will be expanded, and so the green space will be temporarily reduced in phase one. Lucy, where would you want to add green space if you really had to? I don't think it's going to have to happen, but backup plan, where would you want to do it?
I guess I was wondering either on the north or southern end of the on the residential, so the east side, one of those end caps, making that just a larger island. Yeah, either that southern spot or the northern spot. But as we continue to move through, I'm gonna crunch a couple of numbers also. I mean, but if the board feels strongly it should go in the middle, I'm not gonna.
No,
I
we can continue and loop back if you want to do your number crunching and decide. All right, that's what I'm comfortable with.
We good, board?
You're missing a slither of green space along that walkway on the south side. I think you can add to your calculation. Right there, yeah.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Number 12. This is, I can't read my writing. The board, are we still on 12?
Yeah, we're still on 12.
Okay. Snow removal, that's right, and protecting sensitive vegetation. What is an alternative plan?
So I think we would like to proposing. Sorry, thank you. We would like to propose that most of it. We think that most of it will be removed. I mean, there's definitely not enough space in the landscape beds to dump all of the snow every time it snows here. So I think the plan is for the majority of it to be taken off site. And I think, we had shown some areas of on-site storage, I think, for small snow events. But
how would we describe that in the permit?
Sorry, I'm trying to get to that.
Yeah, Jen, I'm sorry. The problem was that when I did a word search for the word snow on the plans, the only instance of the word snow I found was in a note.
Right. I think I don't know that it's specifically called out on the plans. So I think in prior hearings we had discussed removing it from the site.
Yeah, it shows up on C200. It says snow storage note. Snow will be stored in on-site landscaping beds.
Thanks.
Right. So the comment staff. So that's excerpted in the staff report. Snow will be stored on site in landscape beds and green spaces where feasible. Snow that cannot be stored on site will be removed. And then the comment is, if you're going to be putting your snow in your landscape bed, are you just setting yourself up to fail with your landscape bed?
I don't think so. So I think that statement still applies, that in small events, maybe it would be stored in some of the landscape areas, and then certainly the vast majority of it in a large snow event would have to be removed from the site.
But
I mean, I think since parking is so tight on this site, I mean, in some of those large South Burlington parking lots that were designed with tons of parking, you can just dump it all to the middle of the parking area and it stays this giant snow pile all winter long that comes and goes. And in this site, that's just not feasible. We need all of the parking spaces that are shown here on site. So the only reason I think that was discussed as an option to leave some of it in landscape beds was for, if we get 2 inches of snow, are we really going to be removing a bucket or two load full of snow and moving it to a different location? Probably not. But in larger snow events, I would anticipate that most of it would be taken off site.
I could also just add that so we definitely do try to choose plants that are salt tolerant and hardy to this type of condition. So I think to emphasize what Jen's saying, where there are smaller snowfall, that they could be stored on some of these herbaceous planting areas. And Marla, to your point, we did add a strip along the northern piece of the access drive where it is a lawn area, and that could act as snow storage year round to have a more designated spot. So I think that's how we've tried to approach that.
Thanks, Lucy.
And is it getting too granular to talk about like a temporary storage scenario? If we do get a really large storm event over multiple days, you know, you're going to have trucks out there plowing every so often. You're not going to have a loader,
right?
You know, to haul it off site
Right.
immediately. You'd assume that you'd want to do that at the end of the storm event.
Right. So I think the location that Lucy just mentioned, where it's grass.
maybe we're looking at this too narrowly. I mean, you do have, isn't there a management plan that's been requested, Marla? Didn't I see some mention in here of a management plan for the property?
Management for the affordability.
Oh, only for that, right? So we don't have a general requirement, but they tell us how they're going to maintain the property or anything like that. Because what I was thinking was, you know, if they have an affirmative obligation to keep up the landscaping, then they're going to use reasonable judgment in how much snow they allow to accumulate. Anyway, I mean,
it's disincentive to.
It's a disincentive to harm the vegetation and an incentive to remove the snow when it starts to get serious. Right?
Is there, just to follow up on that, is there any obligation for them to clear all the spots? So can we make that a condition that they need to keep the parking spots clear, reasonably clear? So if they want to store it on site, they can. If they can't, then they got to move it off site. My concern would be, hey, it's cheaper if we just pile it up and take up half the parking and the residents.
I would
Put it on
advise
John's
against
space.
that. You are prohibited from requiring more than one parking space per unit, and there are 27 parking spaces under the building. So if they have 3 that are kept clear, they are in compliance with the law.
But I don't imagine that would be the case. John, you make a good point. I think parking is tight on this site outside of the underground parking. So I think the landowner, since he plans to retain this property himself, will have some incentive to take care of snow removal on the site.
Are we ready to move on? Now we're on 13. The board, this is illumination. Board in its decision SD 2305 directed the applicant to reduce illumination levels over the south property line to a 0.3 foot candle maximum, and at the east entrance to the bank to more than 8 to 10 foot candles. While this application has lower numbers, they do not adhere to the specific conditions established in SD 2305. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to meet those requirements.
This one also has an easy answer. We were able to update the landscape or the lighting plan, noting those concerns that staff had, and we resubmitted a new lighting plan late last night or first thing this morning. So I think that Marty has that in his package here.
Submitted to staff?
Yes. So I think the comment is based on the original submittal a month ago.
It's now compliant.
Yes.
You look puzzled.
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh.
Are you okay with this? Okay. Okay. Let's see if there are any public comments. Hearing none, I would entertain.
Wait.
Oops.
Because remember, there was a discussion about the bike parking and wanted to give them, you guys, see how everything else went, see if there were any other outstanding
That's right.
conditions.
That's right. Thank you.
And then we were going to give them a minute to go powwow in the hallway and decide if they can live with that condition.
I'd also like to say that there are some comments about Public Works and the Champlain Water District. We were able to meet all of those conditions. We resubmitted plans because we didn't want that to be something that hung up this application.
So, shall you go powwow?
I want to be sure we're powwowing about the right issue. This is specifically related to the issue of Chase revising their floor plans for the bike storage, or am I on the wrong issue?
Yes, that and making it so people could use the entrance closest to the bike storage, right?
Okay. I think as much as Greg and I would like to make that decision, I don't know that we're at liberty to do so. The person I think that's ultimately responsible for agreeing to that is Kelly, the Chase Bank architect.
Okay, Kelly, before you leap, let me ask a question. So I want to frame the issue. The choice they're facing is if you can't consent to the condition today, then the alternative is a continuance. Is that correct? Marlon? All right. So that's your choice, a continuance or a consent to the condition.
Well, I do want to say thank you to the board for all the time they've spent on this. For those of us who have been along for the whole journey, it's been about 4 years. And I think what's important to remember is that the basic concept of the project hasn't really changed over that period of time. We've been sort of slugging it out over small things, but the small things are what add up to make good projects. So no complaints here. But I think the project is a good project for South Burlington, and I would really like to ask that you consider moving forward, because we're trying to keep Chase engaged. We're trying to we don't want this to come unspun. If you're telling me but for that issue, and then I would say, well, we'll take what conditions you think are appropriate, and we'll take it up with Chase. We're talking about an internal change to their floor plan.
And I'd like to say, particularly to Mr. Bourne, who I think has been making an effort, we understand, I believe, that where the pressure on the changes, resistance to change is coming from, we acknowledge that difficulty. We have a job here. We do it to the best of our ability. But we think Mr. Bourne has acted in good faith and is proposing a significant improvement to that corner of South Burlington. And Burlington, and while it may not have appeared at times, I think we appreciate it.
Thank you for those words.
I would like to ask the board to respectfully reconsider one aspect of this ask, and that is that the back of house area not only holds the secure lounge where the employees are going to leave their bikes and be sure that their bikes are going to be safe from weather, which is really what the code references. But it also houses the IT room, and Chase has a security team that goes beyond us, the architect, working with Chase's designers. They have a plethora of rules and regulations that everyone has to follow in order to ensure the safety of their IT room. And that is the reason why we can't just agree to make that door an entry exit for, even if it's just for employees with a key card or whatever it may be, because there's also landscaping to take into consideration. There could be people hiding behind a bush. I'm just imagining any kind of situation that the security team usually uses as an example in these scenarios. And so I can really foresee Chase not liking that idea. It's something that we can all discuss. But like I said, it goes beyond Chase's designers. It goes up to their security team on a national level. And that is the reason why it's not an easy yes or no.
Don, can I recommend a straw vote on this for us? Because I'm against doing this, forcing this issue, because I just don't see it being as important.
Okay. So you don't see having the bikes stored in the break room as a big deal?
I mean,
I
agree that they should be stored in a safe, secure place in the building, but I don't think it needs to be shifted towards the entrance to that room.
Okay.
Right. The way they have it depicted is fine with me. I mean, they don't actually have to park their bike right there in that storage area either, right? They could just put it on the other side. I mean, we're trying to regulate things that are going to occur inside a building, right?
Okay.
I guess I am not strongly opinionated about
Okay. Thank you for asking for a straw poll. So, shall we take a straw poll?
Could I ask Kelly a question first? Because I'm not sure I fully understood her comment. Are you saying that requiring employees to be able to entrance through that door interferes with IT security or security of the building? I mean, how does that interfere with security? I don't get it.
Sure. So that entrance is always used as an egress only for life safety. Employees are never allowed to go in through that door. And that is mainly because the IT room is in that back of house area. And I guess the way they do it is if you look at the plan, there's a secure door on the inside leading into that back of house space. And that egress door, that exterior door, is exit only. That means that they just try to maximize protection around the areas that are leading up to their IT room. And that's why that door is never an entry exit.
Yeah. So where is the IT room? To the left of that door? Where is the IT room?
The IT room is actually next to the bike racks. Yeah.
Is there, all the way back there?
Correct.
And letting employees in that door is going to jeopardize the IT room.
These are just rules that we follow that have been established on a national level on all their banks. Yeah. It provides a secure back of house space, and it just provides another layer of protection before reaching the IT room.
So when people come with their bicycles, where are they going to enter the building? If we go along, they'll enter there, they'll have to take their bikes all the way through the building. Wow.
They can't come in through that other opening?
That's what she's saying is contrary to national standards of the bank.
And that can't be changed.
Basically saying it's fire egress.
Fire.
And I understand what she's saying, having worked for large companies before.
Yep.
And is to Charlie's point, which I think is perfectly valid. What I don't like about this is I think putting that room, the bicycle storage where it is making it much more difficult for employees to want to bike in. I can see the managers having a lot of trouble with trekking a dripping wet bike through the main lobby, all the way in the back and locking it up. Is this the hill I want to die on, as Quinn mentioned before? Do we torpedo the project for it? No. but I think it really does defeat the whole spirit of what we're trying to do, which is to make it more convenient. Given this information, it would have made a lot more sense to have put that right off the main entrance in some sort of locked closet. And then employees could have just locked the bikes in that closet and gone in.
Yeah, I'll chime in with a similar sentiment as I spoke on this earlier. And I think before, when we had the discussion, it seemed, we were circling back to this for a reason, to see, one, if there was any other issues that were maybe going to hold this open. I similarly don't think I'm landing on the side, I don't think it's necessarily worth continuation, especially the additional testimony that's been provided. When we talked about it early in the evening, it sounded like that was something that could be checked on and maybe the employees could use that. And it seems, now it's kind of being presented differently. So given that we don't have any other items that are really prompting a continuation, similar to John, I would like to see it more user-friendly, but that's how it is at this point, and so I would feel comfortable closing and hear from the other board members.
So, straw poll, still want that, Charlie?
It sounds like 3 of the members are okay with closing.
Okay, all right.
That was to just gauge
all right.
what they just said. So,
well, I'm sort of wiggling because I understand Kelly's point. I mean, I've represented large companies, and you can bang your head against the wall.
No
is
issue
there
for me.
Is there some kind of soft condition we could propose? That would be strongly encourage them to have a discussion.
So sorry.
Redesign or something.
I wonder if that's something we can sort out in deliberation. Like, we have enough information, and then if we wanted to do a soft condition that we think when it.
I'll fold on. I'll go with Charlie.
Okay. Any public comment? I think we've asked for that already. Okay. Okay. I would entertain a motion to close.
Did Lucy have any luck recalculating her landscaping?
Yeah, your timing is just so good. I actually just sent a snip to Marty really quick to see, what areas. This is an area I tried to be generous on what is considered the interior parking. I don't know, Marty, if you're able to
Hang on, we're working on this. We've never shared a snip before.
I know. I kind of just fast and loose. It was just put it in the chat to Marty to see if that could. There we go. So that's the revised piece. I tried to be generous with what's considered the interior parking island, as you can see, including the handicap, and the required interior space would be 1,527, and the proposed is 1,700 with those green areas. I did include where those bike parking spaces would be at the northwest corner of the parking lot as well. So I did exclude those from the calculation.
Thanks, Lucy.
Okay. Anything else?
Can you send this to us as a more formal submission?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great. Okay. Anything else before we entertain a motion to close the hearing?
Has public had a shot yet? No.
Yes.
They have. Entertain a motion?
Move to close.
Thank you, John. A second? Second. Thank you, Charlie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. The motion is carried.
Thank you for so much.
Thank you for your patience.
So many.
Bio break.
So there's 3 sets of minutes in the packet. Some of them were, they're consecutive, but they feel like they were a long time ago because there was no first meeting in April. February 20th Was that the meeting that was upstairs? And then March 5th was town meeting day, and then March 19th was the last real meeting. And you do have enough for a quorum if you want to proceed while Stephanie is out of the room.
Okay. I will move that the minutes be adopted.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are adopted as presented.
Okay, great. Thank
And
you.
the meeting is over.
Okay, great. Meeting is ended.